One of the most dramatic stories in mountaineering took place in July of this year on K2 when Kristen Harila and Lama Sherpa finished completing all 14 of the 8,000 meter peaks in 92 days, 3 months and 1 day, an astonishing world record that literally boggles the mind. An absolutely astonishing accomplishment, whichever way you look at it, requiring determination, desire, physical aptitude and ability, and the ability to endure incredibly long sufferfests. One of the stories that emerged from K2 was the tragic loss of life of a Pakistani porter named Muhammed Hassan. He fell at about 8,200 meters. We've covered this story extensively on this channel, Everest Mystery. Kristen Harila was there shortly after Muhammed Hassan fell. She was caught up in a whirlwind of controversy because the media covered it as if she stepped over a dying person on her way to complete the world record of climbing all 14 8,000 meter peaks. This is a story that's very dear to me because I too was caught up in a much smaller controversy, having encountered 3 men who lost their lives on Mount Everest in 2016. And the reporting of it that did reach the greater public was done not necessarily incorrectly, but incompletely. I was never able to tell my entire story, and that's what I'm endeavoring to do now as I write a book about my experiences in the mountains, and it will include that story. But today is a time for Kristen Harila to tell her story of what happened on K2 on July 27th in 2023. Honestly, I'm shocked and surprised that so many people jump to conclusions. I'm used to people trolling me on this Everest Mystery channel, and I usually don't put much credence in it because the usernames don't give any indication of who the coward is on the other end of these rude comments. But on Instagram, on Kristen's Instagram account, it's amazing that people would use their real names to say such rude and uncorroborated things. They really don't know. So all we can do in this time is ask Kristen to explain it in her own words and take it at that. I personally had the opportunity to speak to Kristen Harila this week, and we spoke for about an hour, and in that time she went into great detail about what took place on K2 that day, July 27th, 2023, and that's what I'm going to bring you today. This is a multi-part interview with Kristen Harila, one of the more inspiring stories I've brought to this channel, Everest Mystery. But today I'm going to bring you the K2 story. But first, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Musa Masala. They're a 501c3 nonprofit organization creating an adventurous outdoor community focused on safe, healthy, culturally aware wilderness activities while prioritizing projects for healthcare and education in Nepal. That includes dental and health clinics, a climbing competition in Kathmandu every November, student scholarships, and financial support for the Wangchu Sherpa Memorial Hospital. I've provided a link in the notes of this video so you can find out more about Musa Masala. They are awesome. Thank you, Musa Masala, for your support of Everest Mystery. And now to my interview with Kristen Harila. So can K2, you saved the hardest for last. K2 turned into kind of a debacle because the summit window was so tight. And so a storm, at least you thought a storm was coming. Everybody's on the mountain at 100+ people at Camp 3.
Yeah.
So can you take me through your summit day? Because and obviously the Muhammed Hassan story, which I'd love to hear you talk about and I've listened to. There's a lot of people, it looked like you felt a storm coming. It was like, it's now or never. It kind of had that sense from here.
Yeah, I'm always, when we are up, I'm not very stressed about the summit. I know that we will make it. And I knew also here that last year I did summit the last mountains in Pakistan in the middle of August. So I wasn't very worried about we need to summit now when we knew we had 3 months to take the records. I wasn't worried and stressed at all about making it to the summit that day or that summit window. I know they did summit the day after, but I wasn't. I always say that we can. I'm confident that we will reach the summit, but maybe we have to take one step down or maybe wait for the next window. But that's okay. That's better, and I think that overall in this 28 to 8,000 meter, I think that kept us safe. I'm sure it did, to like actually look at the weather and the condition in the mountain and say, okay, we can go or we can wait or we can take one step down. So I think that's important. And we saw that on Manaslu also last year. So yeah, so K2, it was a little bit coincident. There was K2 after Broad Peak. We were having discussions, should we do K2 first? Because we were waiting to see if other did summit or if we want to do Broad Peak, and we knew that people already did summit Broad Peak. So we summited Broad Peak, came back to K2 base camp, and we had 24 hours to start to climb. Most people were already up in Camp 2 or Camp 3 when we started. And I was actually most worried about the rock falls because last year we had terrible rock falls on K2. So from advanced base camp and up to Camp 3, we had 0 rock falls. And the condition were so much better. And I was just like, oh, thank God. It was much easier than last year up to Camp 3. And last year we did summit from Camp 4 and only 5 hours from Camp 4 to the summit. Like really, one of the easiest 8,000 meter I did last year was on K2. And that says like a lot when we knew how hard it was this year and how the condition changed. So we came to Camp 3, rested a couple of hours and decided to send 2 of our Sherpa. We were 3 Sherpas and 3 climbers, or actually 4 climbers and 3 Sherpas. But our second camera guy, he decided to turn around very early from Camp 3. So we decided to send 2 of the 3 Sherpas to help with the fixing. And they are like the best Sherpa you can ever imagine. They are so amazing strong. So Lama was in charge of me and Gabriel, our camera guy, and Nima, that is a climber from a Sherpa family in Nepal. So Lama was having the 3 of us, and we started out. And when we reached Camp 4, we could see that the fixing team were already past the bottleneck. So we knew they were above. We saw the light because it was dark. And we continue up and we were passing a lot of people. And right before we were turning to the bottleneck, we had 6 people in front of us. And we tried to pass, but it was like too much snow and we couldn't pass them. So I said to Lama, okay, let's just wait behind. And I don't know how many people we passed, but a lot of people we passed on the way up there. And when we go on this very, very narrow trail, it's not even a trail. It's almost like you have to go all the way into the wall, and you have this rock hanging over you, and you have a very steep side on the other side. And last year, it felt like you were walking on a stable trail, and it was very different this year. It was very hard to walk there. And we didn't actually see the fall, but suddenly it stops up, and we see that this one person was hanging upside down. This was the number 2 in the line of 6 in front of us. And number 1, he was more far behind on the trail. And this number 2, we saw that it was a person. We didn't see if it was a man or woman or a porter or Sherpa or climber. We only saw that the person was hanging upside down and without a down suit, without gloves, and his stomach was bare and no oxygen. And it was about 5 meters down and a few meters out from the trail. So it wasn't very far. But we were standing there and we understood that he needed help. And I felt it took like 30 minutes before something happened. But We know now it took about 7 minutes. And then I say to Lama, we need to try to go out to him and help him. So we decided to clip around, like holding in the rope, and went around these persons in front of us. And the number 3 in the line, he was a Sherpa from 8K, so he tried to put up an ice anchor. And as he tried, he also fell down. And people behind, because it was dark, so people behind, they didn't see what was happening there. So they were pushing on, and we saw like a lot of people behind us. And those people we had in front of us, this from number 3 to number 6, I felt that they were also pushing to come back. So we had to do something, and we clipped around, and we get a rope from behind. Lama goes out and tries to turn Hassan, but he didn't manage. So he comes back to the trail, and we put the rope on Lama, and he climbs up to the upper anchor. And then, because then it's no rope there, because the rope is down with Mr. Hassan. And when he comes up, he reached the number 1 in the line, because we were trying to scream for him to come back and help with the rope from there. But we don't know if he was just like too afraid to come back, or if he didn't hear. Or so when Lama comes up, this guy also came, and Gabriel goes out to Mr. Hassan and managed to turn him around, and with the rope managed to get him up. And he gives him oxygen. And I feel it takes a very long time, but we were there probably 1.5 hours. I think last year it took me like 10 to 15 minutes to cross the bottleneck, 10 minutes probably. So we were there a very long time, and around 3:15 or something, there is coming a big avalanche. We are safe, or I shouldn't say safe, because we are under the Serac, and we know that anytime something can, like ice, can comes down from the Serac. And we know that happened like in 2008 when the Norwegian guy died there. He was hit by an ice block. And we know that another one that died in 2008, he died when he tried to clip around. So we know it's very risky to do that, but we felt it was the only thing we could do at that point. And the avalanches comes on the side of the Serac. So no one in our group or line of people are hurt by the avalanches. But we get the message on the radio that the fixing team have problem. And we know that we have 2 Sherpas in the fixing team, and we know that they are around the corner. So we decide to split up. Gabriel still stays with Hassan down, and another Sherpa, the number 3 in the line, he comes up and continue to help with the rope, and me and Lama continue up. Around the corner, we meet the fixing team, and they are terrified, but they are okay. And I text the team home and say, we have problems. And we continue, and it takes a very, very long time. It's almost like we're not moving because of the snow condition there. So it's very heavy and deep snow. But we continue and reach the summit. And on the summit, I call back home to my team, and I tell what happened. And they say that everyone is fine. And I was like, oh, gosh, that's good. And they had been calling to 7 Summit, and 7 Summit had confirmed that everyone in our team was okay. And also, I don't know how long time we stayed on the summit, but 30 to 45 minutes, and Gabriel comes up. And I asked Gabriel, did you manage to get him all up to the trail? Because he wasn't all up when we are left. So I asked, did you manage to get him up? And he said, yes, we did. And I asked, is he alive? And he said, yes, but he's in a very bad condition. And we turn and go down, and people ask, why didn't you turn around at that point? And it would have been so much more risky to like either make everyone turn around at the same point. I don't know how many people, but maybe 100 people, or to clip around. It would be so much more risky to do that. So turning or passing each other on the summit or below before you come to the bottleneck is possible. But in the bottleneck, it's very, very risky to do that. And that's why it's called the bottleneck. And when we comes down and are passing bottleneck, we see that he is dead, he's gone. And of course, very, very sad to see that. And first, it's just a tragical accident on the most dangerous mountain in the world, and not about me. I know it's been all about me since this, but it's not really about me. It's a tragical accident. And we know now that he shouldn't have been there. We know he didn't have the experience to go up there. We were already questioning that when we saw him first hanging upside down, because his harness was like in a weird position and the rope was like something like twisted around his legs. He didn't have a down suit. He didn't have oxygen. And of course, he should never have been on K2 as the first 8,000 meter. And if Lama, my Sherpa, did come to me and say, hey, Kristin, I want to go to K2 without a down suit and without oxygen, I would have said, no, of course you're not going. Like, for example, the two Sherpa that we did send with the fixing team, we send with them one extra oxygen bottle each, because we know it takes longer time and we know they need extra oxygen then. So to go up as a part of the fixing team with no oxygen should never have happened. So of course, very sad, and we come down to base camp. And what's normal when we come to base camp is that the people that are working in our base camp, in Pakistan, they put up a fire, and they did. And then they had baked a cake for us, and we did have the cake, and we didn't have any celebration. No one was in a mood for that, and we went to bed. And that's it. And of course, first of all, just like a very tragical accident for Hassan himself and for his family.
Yeah, first of all, the bottleneck, for people who don't know, you're talking about the most dangerous mountain and the most dangerous spot on the most dangerous mountain. And there's a log jam of people, and people approaching down below have no idea.
They don't see, it's dark and middle of the night, and they don't see what's happening in front of there.
I've it's funny, I've speculated on this a lot. I've thought a lot about it, having encountered people who lost their lives on Mount Everest, and I've seen a lot of people on other mountains as well. But first of all, it seems to me that there's almost nothing anybody could have done. It might have been just for the optics, like, we're going to try to save him, but the potential for them dying as well is there. But it sounds to me like no matter what, he was in really bad shape. Like, he was beyond the point of no return. And when he fell, he was probably like about gone anyway. And so what you're saying is you have a team ahead of you. Your team, Sherpa, are supposedly in some predicament. And of course, so Gabrielle stays, and you're just trying to juggle this.
Yeah, and it's where he was hanging. It's not possible to be more than one on one side and one on the other side on the trail, and Gabrielle down. It's not possible to be 5 people around, and it's not possible to carry anyone there. We know from the accident in 2008 that they tried to carry a guy from below the bottleneck, and they all fell, and many more lost their life. So we know, like, if you're on Everest at 8,002, it's actually possible to be 5 people around and carry. But here, it's not possible. On this 8,000 meter, there's a few spots where it's not possible to be many people around and to help to carry. And the bottleneck is one where it's not possible. If he could walk himself, it could have been possible, but he couldn't. And it's not like there is a rescue team or that is helicopters that can fly up there. It's not possible. And it's not possible to carry someone from there. And I think it's also important to remember that the conditions, if you like compare it to last year, where the trail was like stable, but this year was like slipping under our feet as we were walking on it. And maybe that was what happened with him. We didn't see actually when he fell, but maybe because of the snow was so like just slipped under your feet, maybe that was what happened. Who knows? But yeah, it was a very hard condition there this year.
My personal thoughts about what happened on July 27th on K2 is that it would have been impossible to save Muhammed Hassan's life. I feel as though he probably would have died in a short amount of time, no matter what was happening. And I'm happy that Muhammed Hassan did have someone there with him in those final hours of his life. I'm satisfied that Kristin and Lama did everything they possibly could while also attending to the needs of the other two people on their team. Two Sherpa who were out ahead of them, who were fearful of their own safety because of avalanches that were taking place up ahead and around a corner out of view of Lama and Kristin. What do you think took place that day? Why don't you leave your comments below, give us a like, and if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and think about following me on Patreon and becoming a member of this channel for exclusive content where some of my interview with Kristen Harila will be. Thanks for being a part of Everest Mystery. Be kind, do a kind deed. Don't look for anything in return. Make the world a better place, one tiny step at a time. Thanks for being here, my friends. Peace out.